Surfing with the Alien is the second studio album by American rock guitarist Joe Satriani. It was released on October 15th, 1987 by Relativity Records. The album is one of Satriani's most successful to date and helped establish his reputation as a respected rock guitarist. The album was recorded on a budget of just $13,000. Satriani's equipment was limited by this budget, and it consisted of only 2 Kramer Pacer guitars and an old Strat, for which you'd have to change the pickups to get different sounds. The cover art of the original release depicts the Marvel Comics character, the Silver Surfer, on the front. The original license to use the character artwork was time limited though. Though the license was renewed multiple times, in 2018 Satriani and Marvel could not come to terms on a price, and so the cover art was replaced with a silver headstock. Hey guys, and welcome to the Lit Loft. My name is Danny.
Hi, my name's Rich.
And welcome to Guitar Moments, our guitar interactive podcast, the world's first, best, maybe
well,
not. But
our first, maybe not our best. But
well, we're hoping so. What we thought would be really cool is that we feel the art of the album has been lost in terms of, in this streaming era, people will pick one song off this album, put it on a playlist with another song from 10 years later, and you pick your favourite songs and that's it. But I don't know about you, but I really like listening to an album in its entirety. I like the fact that that band was in that particular place at that time. They've planned how the tracks sort of go into each other. They've thought about the overall rather than just a quick hit or as a one-off song. So what we want to do is we want to, obviously being a guitar channel, explore some of the the best guitar moments from these albums. So we really need your suggestions, and it could be any style of guitar, not just in the style of obviously who we're doing today, Mr. Joe Satriani. It can be any style, any album you can think of. Please leave it below. We've also got some really cool guests coming on. So thanks to all your support for all the views and the subscribers we're gaining. It allows us to now, have some really cool guests on the channel. We can, rather than just sort of interviewing them and having a general conversation, it means that we can, find out about these really cool guitar players and maybe what albums influenced them, what are their favourite moments. Because hopefully by doing this we're going to pick up on some real deep cuts. It's not just going to be like the main riffs and the choruses. It's going to be, oh my god, I can't believe that.
It can be as little or as big as just one lick, or just like we say, as a moment where that turned it for you. If it wasn't for that song or for that little 20 seconds of that track, you'd be I don't know.
Yeah,
something else. You'd be a clarinet player or something.
Yeah. Our next series, Clarinet Moments, coming out soon. So, Surfing with the Alien, we thought we'd kick off this series because obviously we haven't been able to get your comments because this is the first one. We didn't get a guest on because we thought we should kick this off together. So, Surfing with the Alien means a hell of a lot to me and Rich because not being dramatic, but without that album we wouldn't be here doing this. We probably wouldn't necessarily be playing guitar, or if we were, it would be in a very different direction.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it? I think it's incredibly interesting to see what may have been, in terms of the direction you'd have gone musically and what you'd have inherited. Because I think it's quite important what you do absorb when you're at that stage when you're learning guitar. Very much like you are when you're a kid, when you grow up. There are certain things that just seem to stick with you because you're like a sponge then, you're learning and you're working stuff out. So for someone as strong as influence as Satriani or Vi or whoever enters your life at that point, and you're kind of like, you connect with it, it's incredibly powerful. And I think it does influence you, and you can't help it influence you, and you kind of, that's the beauty of all this, is that they've had the same thing with players before them and other guys before them, and it's all about kind of getting that bit of somebody and that bit of someone else, and then adding you to it. Then that's you, and then that may, in the future, someone else might hear something you did and go, and that's like this little kind of chain of players that have just you've kind of picked up along the way, and I think that's just such a cool thing. And then for me, that really kind of helps kind of map it out like it's more of like a passing the baton thing rather than trying to, no one's going to try to be the best. It's not a competitive thing. It's just, you're just sharing and just, you give in and you take in here and you give in there. It's just a really cool thing. I mean, art in general. Without us waffling on anyway, without getting too deep into the sort of
but it's
things, but it's an important point. Yeah.
So for this episode, I asked Rich to kind of pick up sort of 5 of his favourite kind of guitar moments from this. So it'd be interesting to see what you've come up with. I think it's fair to say that we both, we take things and we adapt them to us. So it's not about playing each lick and each riff exactly how it is. It's more about, what this album meant for us, how we've taken those bits on in our playing, and just about how revolutionary some of this stuff is. Yeah. So what was your guitar moment number 1?
I mean, the first one is straight away, I think when I first hit play was the Surfing with the Alien riff and track. I mean, is that in its entirety would be, even if that was all he put out, and quit, it would be like, oh, fair, done, But yeah, the main riff was something that really got to me, because I think what I kind of grew up on was Status Quo, Martin Knopfler, and Led Zeppelin, and all the great rock and roll stuff and the guitar stuff, and it was all that kind of riff based stuff, and then for something to come in and kick off like this track does, as well as all the other great stuff that happens in that track, was just like, this ticks all the boxes for me, even though I didn't know what was going on. It was kind of my effort to kind of try and figure it out. But yeah, this is the riff that we're on about. And on it goes. But it's such a simple, just knocks you off your feet, and you just can't help but just like, get on with it. But
I don't know why it just reminded me. Basically, I won backstage passes when I was 16. Do you remember? To G3?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So basically, on the Satriani website, I don't know if you still can, but when you're going to a gig, if you remember, you can click attending, and then out of that attending list, he would do a prize draw of who got backstage passes.
Okay. Yeah.
So I signed up pretty much everyone I could think of. But no, I signed up me and my dad, because that's who was going to the show. The stipulation was you had to be going with the ticket, so I couldn't just create fake accounts. But signed up me and my dad, and I remember logging on and seeing my dad's name got chosen as the winner. So I completely lost my mind. I remember ringing him, probably almost crying. I was so excited. So anyway, cut story short, we go backstage and everyone couldn't be cooler. But Vi comes in this way, me and my dad are sat in the middle, Satch comes in this way, and the first thing this guy says, he goes, "Why didn't you play Surfing with the Alien?" And I remember Satch, he's the nicest guy you'll ever meet, and I mean this, he's like ridiculously friendly. And I remember he just went, well, you can't please everyone, like it's G3, it's not just my own show sort of thing. So I was picking, really polite answer, and then he went, thanks, and he went on, and I'm not joking, me and my dad must have got about 30-45 minutes with Satch, and this guy probably got 30 seconds. And not even, "Hey Joe, great show, oh man, I miss surf." There's ways of talking to people, and I just remember that this guy's just, he'd waited there for about an hour for them to come, and within 30 seconds, he'd rubbed up probably the nicest guy in the music industry up the wrong way. But
then I guess, on the other hand, you could say that it's the power that that obviously is like, maybe that's that guy's holy grail, that track, as it is most people's. But I mean, anyway, there's a couple other bits in that track that really jumped out. I mean, there's loads of it, but I think one of it was the pick tapping part. I mean, you cannot not leave that. But I remember going to my teacher then, which was actually both other guys. Our teacher, a guy called Mick Hutchinson, and he was some sort of wizard or Yoda of guitar. I don't know. He was just We'll have to do something with him or on him at some point in the future.
Mick's a really interesting
so many stories
person, because he was like properly famous in like the 60s.
Yeah.
He played with Hendrix. He had all these famous bands support him, and he was known as a bit of like a guitar virtuoso back in that kind of scene. So we'll definitely do something with him.
But I do remember sitting there when I first grabbed this, I had the CD of it, and one thing he did have in his little studio makeshift house thing was the CD player, and he built this pedal. I don't know if you remember, this little square pedal thing, and it linked it, I don't know, sort of hardwired this thing, and it linked to the skip buttons on the CD player. So whenever he pressed this pedal, he could skip forward or back on a CD player. It was brilliant. But I just remember him just sitting there, and just, the whole lesson was just, this picking thing. It's like, and like literally stop. And he'd tab it out, and you have this array of coloured pencils out of some sort of, I don't know, tin he had, and scribble down with the tab and his sort of scruffy handwriting. I remember just grabbing all the bits of paper, and I never had anything, I'd sort of grab, I don't know, a bit of paper I found, and he'd do the tabs on that. So I always had this sort of pile of, literally looked like rubbish, with these coloured pencils, drawings on it, all these tabs of, all this stuff I wanted to learn. And one of them was the picked up in bit for Surf from the Alien. And it's a weird thing. You kind of use a weird muscle in your arm to do it.
It's like a twitch.
It's weird, isn't it? Some people would just got that twitch and they can just do it lightning, but it takes a while. But I'll show you what I mean. I want to remember it. And so on. It goes on to some legato bit, but that picking bit was just something that was literally like a lightning strike when you first hear that, because it stops as well. The other thing he does a lot in this album is you sort of play a part and then it just sort of stops and it just kicks in, and you've got that little drop, and it just aids that explosiveness of that lick or that idea. And I just remember that drops in, and that's just so unexpected, and it goes off into some weird scale as well. It adds to it, and it's just this whole part that just kind of goes, wow.
Yeah, it comes from a very kind of rock and roll, Chuck Berry-esque, very melodic, the bit you can sing along, into these noises with the whammy bar and this silence, into this kind of pick tapping, I don't know what it is, diminished harmonic minory type flavour, or it just completely takes it to a different place.
Yeah, just face melting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the other thing I remember about this track was this other part towards the end, and it was just, again, not it's the most technical of licks, but it was just the way it sounded. And I remember at the time, I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to get even close to it. Obviously, it was with his whammy bar. I didn't have a whammy bar at the time, but I think the closest I got to this was when I was using a wah pedal and then just sort of hitting the wah with it. But this lick, if I can do it without fudging it up. So it's a weird one, because this is it. This is what I loved about it, because he sat there and kind of came up with this stuff pretty much, and kind of like, well, I'm going to sort of, as I pick the guitar, I'm going to hit this whammy bar and get that kind of scoop, and it's a bizarre sound, and he does that with a load of stuff, but it's just...
So we're 2-3 minutes into the album. We've had plectrum tapping.
Crazy.
We've had weird alien noises with the whammy bar.
Just harmonics. I don't know. Yeah.
We've now had a riff that every note is kind of in sync with the whammy bar. There's so much different techniques in there, but not for the sake of technique.
No, it's
all adding something. Because if you were to just play that last riff with none of that whammy bar, it would be quite a stale, repetitive.
It doesn't. It just doesn't really work, does it? But anyway, again, like we said, we've gone,
Yeah, we could spend the whole first episode on that one song, so we'll try and move on. So what have you got for us next?
Guitar moment number 2. This one was, this is a great track. This is just, it's just a beautiful track. It's the tapping part. Everyone loves it. If you go and see him live, you've seen him live, it's sort of almost like the obligatory kind of cheer when he kind of breaks into it, and sort of celebrate this cool little lick. But it's the tapping part in Always With Me, Always With You. I have stolen it as well, stolen the idea, as many others have. But
so Rich had a channel before this, still does, but hasn't uploaded on it since about 1985.
Pre-YouTube.
Yeah. But he recorded a guitar album called Rectify. I might be slightly biased because I was probably there whilst you recorded it all, so it's all in my head still. So when I hear it, I'm like, I can remember that
another
process.
Guitar moment,
But Rich had a track called Blue Rose, and in the age today where viral videos are getting millions and millions of views, back then Rich got sort of 80,000 views pretty quickly on this video, and had people from all over the world asking him for tabs, backing tracks, all sorts. But yeah, I remember that this track had that section. You did change it and put your own spin on it.
Yeah,
it's definitely safe to say that it was fairly heavily influenced by this part.
Yeah.
But yeah, please check out Blue Rose by Richard Cruden. Leave a comment on there, and it might
if it's still there,
republish it on YouTube or something.
Maybe an old email come through.
You might get a pound or something.
Don't know. Right, this is the lick. Something along those lines. Again, in context of the track and everything, and like we said before, like he was just an absolute genius of kind of building up to these points in the song, and just it would be the pinnacle, and it just sort of lifted you, and everything there was the emotion, the feel. But the hardest thing is because like you were saying before, like we were talking earlier, was tapping is such a cool technique, and it's such an easy thing to do relatively to a lot of other things in the guitar.
Yeah.
That it's so impressive, but you can do it really quickly, but actually something like that is actually quite hard to do, and get that kind of pace and that feel, not rush it, because I think tapping is just lends itself to kind of, you just want to go and just get
again something he's doing not for the sake of it. It's in time, it's got that bounce, it's like you wouldn't get that if you couldn't use both hands. It wouldn't be the same.
No. And something like the technique is at the back of the the list as well. He's sort of he's using that tool to get that idea across, not just because he wanted to necessarily maybe put a tapping thing in. It's just
but also this song is so major and happy, and it's hard to think of too many other kind of, especially kind of guitar instrumental tracks that has that same amount of emotion and gets people clapping and on their feet, and makes people feel like that, when it's such a, I always find it's harder to do in a major key.
It is, you're right, it's a good point. I mean,
like I always come across when I play a major, I always feel like my playing's a bit cheesy.
Straight away, isn't it? It's sort of a bit corny, like a little bit kind of like,
and that's the challenge for me now,
it's
like
too
listening
nice,
to players like Danish Pete recently, like he does some really cool major blues playing, and it's something I'd like to add. But I'm just always amazed at this track, at how tasty it is, being so happy.
But you forget it's major, don't you? This
you
is
do,
the thing, you don't notice. It's so well done. You don't. That's all out the window. But
so what have you got next?
Moment number 3 is Satch Boogie. Just because I absolutely love the rock and roll stuff. Listen to Chuck Berry, Status Quo, etc. before, and this just seemed to take that and just put Satriani in the seat and kind of go, right, this is what I'm going to do, and off I go. And it was just like, it's one of those from start to finish where you first hear that little the hi-hat coming in, that shuffle, and you're like, oh man, it's just instant, and you go, this is so cool, and the riff just cracks in, and then he just goes off, and you just take on a ride, and it's brilliant. And
funny you mentioned that, because this is the only song on the album with fully live recorded drums.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing here, but it must be because the rest of it was programmed drums with overdubs of cymbals, snares, toms, so had this really cool contrasting thing. But to program back then, especially, that feel of this swing must have been that he must have just said, look, I need real drums on this. I don't have much budget, I can't do it for the whole album, but I've got this song and this riff that it's just not going to work with programmed drums.
I mean, that's going back then, in the 80s, where you had tapes, you didn't have much gear to do this stuff. So but I mean, I played the riff. It's kind of how I kind of absorbed it, because this is the thing, when I was sort of going through this stuff and learning this stuff when I was younger, it was all about, you know, I never really read. I don't read music. I never really got into reading music, but I just found, because I listened so much, I was able to kind of pick out things and recognise things. And if I didn't recognise it, I'd try and find out why and do it that way. But with all these tracks, I would just sit there and just kind of pick out my versions, or play. That sounds about right. You know, kind of, is that note, that note, that note, to the point where I'd be able to kind of figure it out. And then maybe I never revisit it. Maybe it was a laziness thing, or maybe it was just more of, I've got what I wanted from the track, and you know, I kind of put my own spin on it and off I go. But yeah, the riff, this just getting it swung is so difficult. Yeah. That's the hardest thing. So I'll play it. Well, I'll try and play it. Yeah, it's hard. Like, even then, you kind of, I'm listening as I'm playing it, kind of almost analysing it in a way where I'm kind of going, am I swinging enough? And I think the problem is with stuff like that, if you kind of think like that and go, oh, I'm thinking too much, then you're not playing. And yeah. I think I've always had that struggle with that sort of stuff.
This was a really important song for me because it was probably my first experience of something swing that wasn't like really cheesy. Yeah. You know, when I used to learn my piano ballads and my keyboard lessons, there might have been like Waltzing Matilda or something awful like that you never want to play again.
No.
But I think this showed me that you can play the same notes that you know, or the same licks you know, but you can change the way you play it or the feel of it and get loads more out of it. Whereas especially back then, it was how many notes can I play, how many extra licks can I learn, whereas actually I probably had thousands more if I just learnt to kind of bring in some of that swing feel to what I already had. And it was the first time I'd heard it been done in a cool way with rock guitar and the lot.
That's the other thing, I think, with quite a few of these bits, it was probably a lot of it was the first time, just generally, wasn't it, in terms of guitar players and what they were doing. This was such a sort of setting the precedence and sort of a bit of a, you know, a trendsetter or groundbreaker. It's just all these things coming in, and suddenly like everyone was like, man, what's all this stuff he's playing?
Yeah.
You know.
And yeah, you know, gets such an unfair criticism. He sometimes gets thrown in this, oh, he's a shredder and he plays 1,000,000 miles per hour, and it's just a lazy criticism in my view because there aren't any lyrics. Like I've said to you before, you know, my experience of Satriani was through my dad, who played guitar. He showed me loads of albums, AC/DC, Metallica. Couldn't get into it at that age because I wasn't hearing any melody that I was getting from my keyboard playing. So I was into dance music and those hooks that would repeat themselves.
Yeah.
And we used to put this on the car in his midlife crisis sports car, loud. And I would hear these hooks and I'd be singing them and I'd put them onto my keyboard, and before I knew it, that was what made me really fall in love with the guitar, was this album. And there's so many people who would say that, you know, it's just mindless noodling and all this stuff. Well, it's rubbish because, you know, I was a 13, 14-year-old kid who picked up on nothing but the choruses and the melodies. So any criticism in terms of it's just mind-numbingly noodling, I just won't have it with him.
No.
He just doesn't fall in that category for me. He's a great songwriter, and every single song he has a killer hook or melody.
Yeah, he's very much, isn't he? That's what I think. Even if I wasn't aware of it, is what I initially kind of felt that I kind of connected it on was the strong melodies. And you know, you didn't really get a tired ear from listening to it. This is the thing, because some stuff you can kind of be like, you can appreciate it, it's good, it's technical, it's well written, but I think some stuff has got to listen. You can take it, you know, you can listen to it loads and not get tired of it.
Jeff Campitelli on drums, Stu Ham, a really cool grooving band that doesn't overcomplicate it. I think that also adds up to the Satriani package during this era as well.
Yeah,
it's just like nothing's too complicated. Joe's doing the complicated bits with the nice melodies, but his band are just holding it together to allow him to go. And I think that's where they got that balance right.
Yeah, no, it works really well. So I mean, speaking of the next guitar moment for me, I think this one was Well, I think I remember sort of playing this and working this out, having a bit of help. Again, going back to my, wizard of a teacher and doing the old CD trick, and tabbing it all out. But it was my first real kind of introduction to sort of intervals and shapes and how kind of something was so well kind of woven in terms of the melody. Like, because when you hear this riff, it sounds like a single note thing, but it's a very subtle underlying pair of notes that are kind of supporting it in a way.
Yeah, it's got like these pillows underneath. Yeah. That without them, they sound wrong, but when you play them, sometimes when you just play them and you're trying to find the note and you're accenting them, it also sounds too wrong.
Yeah, it's such
like,
a weird
It's like
thing.
a nice balance of when it all comes together. And I find those things particularly tricky to figure out. Because
I think the best way I can put it is that it's when you're playing it right.
Yeah.
You can't. If you play it wrong, you don't know why, but it just sounds wrong.
Yeah.
And speaking of playing it wrong, I'll probably play it wrong. But yeah, this is Circles, the riff. Cracking. I mean, yeah, it goes into the section, etc. But that whole kind of idea of just playing that little melody, but those little supporting notes and the harmony of it is just such a beautiful. I mean, you hear that in Midnight, isn't it? The double-handed tapping thing, where you kind of, again, it's very piano-like, and you're placing the right harmonies. It's so nice. But yeah, the second bit in this that really I always get excited with this, is the sort of the drop. It's the lead up to the main solo. Because the other thing with this is, I always kind of try and imagine what the songs would sound, would look like.
Right.
If I was to listen to Circles, I'd be like, what's in his head? What's he seeing? What's the story? Is it like aliens coming down, burning crop circles everywhere? And it's like, and this kind of riff at the beginning is like the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
And the bit that leads up to it, this section, is just, it gets me every time. It's this. And then just crashing, isn't it? Yeah. It's just brutal.
It's the programmed double pedal. Yeah. And then it kicks in, yeah.
It's just a fantastic, again, he's just got the bits right again, and it's just goes, and the sound he gets and the chorus, it's just brilliant. And just absolutely tears up on that bit. But again, it allows it to, because of the bit before. It's just this beautiful melodic riff that's just, it's just really building.
So I mean, you could take an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar and play that to members of your family who've got no interest in guitar, and they would think that sounds, really cool. So this is another argument of, it's not just like shred guitar. Yeah. I mean, that riff is so cool. I
think that's what, it's funny you should mention that, because when I first kind of got surfing with the Alien, I started sort of playing it at home, and, Mum and Dad were sort of sitting there and kind of like, what are you listening to? He's this Joe Satriani guy, and it's like, Satriani, Dad. And it's just, but even then, I just kind of, even now, when I think back about it, it's actually it's interesting, because obviously they had no musical background, they had no idea what to do on a guitar, yet they kind of, right, this is quite good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, this is different. They recognised it enough to sort of appreciate it, even if they didn't know what was going on. But I again, just that whole, playing through that for the first time and just sort of, letting it play through the whole album and just going. I just remember at the end of it just being like, what's happened? What the hell's happened?
There's so many bits to that album. There's little interludes where Joe's playing on his own.
Yeah.
There's like soundscapey kind of almost movie score type things.
Yeah.
It's not one where you kind of get bored and go, I'm 3 tracks in, I've had enough of this.
No, it's enough in there. There's enough variety as well. Yeah. I mean, you've got the Satch Boogie in there along with, Crushing Dale, and it's cool. I mean, this one's a little bit of a treat, isn't it? Echo.
So well, it's not really a treat to me to play on bass for you.
Well, I just want to see you play bass.
This is like the heaviest thing in the world. So the reason I chose this was the bass riff from Echo. So it probably is my favourite song on the album, or it has become it. in the later years. But, you know, like you say, many first. This was the first riff that I'd heard that I was working it out on guitar and it just didn't sound like it. And I remember saying to my dad, I was like, what is going on here? Like, it doesn't sound anything like it. He said, it's a bass, you idiot. And I was just like, oh. But, you know, my basic music knowledge back then, very basic, was I presumed the bass was just there to sort of support the rest.
Yeah.
It wasn't there to, you know, be the main kind of riff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that opened my eyes at 13, 14 to a whole world of bands like Flea from Chili Peppers and Muse and loads of cool riffs where the bass were often the focal point. So I just wanted to include this because for me personally it opened up a whole world of music. And trying to actually not just listen to the guitar. I know it's such a basic thing to say now, but there's that point where your ears can separate what's going on in a mix. And I don't think it happens straight away. It might be for some.
Yeah, it does take time. I think I found that. I mean, again, you're always going to be biased towards the guitar because that's what you're listening to first of all, and everything else doesn't sort of really matter at that point. But as you get more kind of musically kind of aware with your ears, you do start picking out other parts. I still, even today, like, I think there's something, I can't even remember what the song is. I think it's like a Beyonce song or something. And it wasn't until recently that somebody pointed out, I was like, yeah, do you know what really annoys me about the song? And I was like, what's that? It's like this triangle. And it's like ding, and it's through the whole track. And I was like, I'd never registered it. And now I hear it all the time. And I was like, thanks, you know. But yeah, it's incredible. But like, I mean, that's sort of against more production. But it's like you say, it's just picking out the stuff and seeing where, you know, what sort of hierarchy of importance of it, and, you know, is that the
how
main
it all
part
gels
or,
together,
supporting.
So yeah, please excuse my bass playing. I am not Stu Ham.
Should we have a little jam with this then? Because play the riff and I'll have a little play along. Yeah, as you can see, not an easy one to play.
Bloody hard to play without a drummer. Because there's all those stabs, and then I ended up changing it into something loosely to make us not play completely out of time.
Bit of fun.
Yeah, so that bass riff when it kicks in is just so cool. Never mind the awesome
so
melody
simple,
that
isn't
comes
it?
over.
There's 2 chords, 1 riff, done. But yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Guitar Moments. It's only going to work if you leave your comments below and let us know what albums you want us to have a look at. It could be any style, long as there's a guitar in it. We're really interested into broadening our horizons or revisiting classics and, you know, picking out suggestions that you suggest, or, you know, you just give us an album and we'll have a listen and kind of give you what we've come away from that.
It might be the first time we ever listened to it, so get a few cool reactions. It'd
be really cool to react to some stuff we've never heard of.
And I still hear new stuff all the time, and I'm just like, how have I not heard this guy?
Yeah.
Blows your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah. So look out for special guests, more episodes of this coming up. Please leave your comment below. What albums, what band you want us to check out, and we'll see you at another episode soon.
Cool. Take care, guys.